Hi everyone, Cramthony Testano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of the new Ab-Soul record, These Days. This guy is a West Coast MC. He's been lighting up my ears with his lyrics ever since he dropped that Ab-Soul interlude on Kendrick Lamar's fantastic album, Section 80. I went on to love the album he dropped in 2012, Control System, one of my favorite hip-hop records of that year. And on this record, he gave himself the label the Abstract Asshole, and it is a name that he has lived up to, with his brags, with his drug talk, with his foul mouth. But simultaneously, his lines are loaded with incredible wordplay and references that are biological, philosophical, biblical. So of course there was no reason whatsoever not to be looking forward to whatever he was doing down the road. Certainly a man who would craft a track such as terrorist threats has nothing mild in his future. But that in fact seems to be the case with These Days. To me, this record is the sound of an adventurous MC doing a 180 and trying to write a more commercial record, which in theory isn't a bad thing. But the thing is, writing catchy music comes with its own league of difficulties and challenges. Challenges I'm not really sure Ab-Soul is up to facing. For years, for project after project, Ab-Soul has put together some pretty smart, conscious, out there creative hip-hop music, and to totally switch around and try to write more straightforward, in-your-face, earworm type stuff, he's essentially walking a different walk on this record, and I think the end result is pretty middle of the road. Now, do not get me wrong, Ab-Soul is not writing totally ignorant, Migos-style verses on this thing, but it's rare that he comes through with a mind-expanding set of bars. Like the third verse on the track Tree of Life, one of the best verses on this entire record. I especially love the ending line talking about why money is green, because it's like vegetation, the most important of all things. His verses on the opening track here are pretty thoughtful. On the opening verse to the song Stigmata, one of the better tracks on this thing as well. And there are some lines that stick out on the Rick Ross featured song Never Mind That, where he's saying, "You're a librarian, got room for my dictionary." It's not great, but he's trying. Although there is kind of an interesting thing going on with this track. Ab-Soul's opening verse on this song, which is one of the deeper and more interesting verses on this entire thing, is interrupted by this really short shot of what sounds like TV or radio distortion, and then it quickly goes into this R&B chorus saying, "Never mind that, never mind that." It's almost as if this track, or maybe this entire record in general, is Ab-Soul making an attempt at writing poppier, simpler, more straightforward music as some kind of comment on not saying anything substantial. It's a concept I can get down with in theory, but in execution, musically, for a loud, trap-flavored hip-hop song, this is pretty terrible. The pacing of the instrumental is way too slow, and this track is just so cluttered with the pitched vocals, with Rick Ross's feature, with Ab-Soul's verses, with the R&B singing, the constant shots of distortion changing the song from one flavor to another, the guitar line weaved into the beat as well. This song just has so many different things going on. Most of the time on this record, Ab-Soul isn't really delivering awful lyrics as much as he is just, in my opinion, delivering lyrics that I think are subpar for him. Not really thoughtful or thought-provoking stuff, namely on tracks like 100 Stacks, a song featuring Schoolboy Q, and I don't mind Schoolboy Q, I liked his last record, but Schoolboy might as well have been rapping across this entire track because topically, there's nothing really separating Ab and Schoolboy. I mean, they use the exact same flow throughout the entire track. There are other tracks on here where the hooks are especially weak and just really incessant, really redundant, like Dubsack and Feelin' Us. There's the song Twacked off this thing, which has a Atlanta snap beat instrumental riding in the background. The whole song feels like he heard a single off of that new YG record and then hit the studio. The only catchy track that I think was legitimately good on this entire record was Just Have Fun. Really upbeat, bright instrumental. I feel like Ab's voice definitely brings a positive, feel-good vibe across as well. There's a slight commentary on using drugs, not allowing drugs to use you in the opening refrain. It's a pretty lackluster first half of the record, but the second half is, I'm not going to say good, but very turbulent and surprising, namely with the Kendrick Lamar featured song on here, where essentially Kendrick is doing with a jazz instrumental hanging in the background, exactly what Ab-Soul did for him on Section 80. And of course, emotionally, it's intense, it's lyrically on point, the instrumental is amazing, Kendrick Lamar's energy is through the roof. It's kind of the best track on the entire record. There's also tracks on the back end of this thing like Closure, which is this terrible sad sack song where I don't really mind a bit of heartbreak or a bit of a story about a relationship on the rocks, but Ab-Soul is singing very weakly throughout this entire track, and it just gets really tedious and dull quickly. The closing track on this LP, not a bad song, one of the lyrically tighter tracks on this entire thing, and there is a Kid Cudi-like hook on this thing, except I do enjoy it. But this closing track, what makes it so strange is that it comes with an amazing surprise as soon as this song concludes, and that is what seems to be raw audio of a battle, a rap battle between Ab-Soul and DAYLYT. With a crowd of people there listening to them, there are a few points where it's pretty audible that Schoolboy Q is there. Ab does a verse, DAYLYT does a verse. This lasts for almost 20 minutes. And it's so thrilling and it's so interesting because Ab-Soul, for a guy who doesn't battle professionally, really holds his own. For whatever reason he put this thing on the record, I think it's a great addition. I mean, I feel like there are a lot of people in hip-hop, fans of hip-hop right now, who complain that there's a certain level of talent lacking in a lot of the bigger artists in the industry right now. And here you have an artist coming forward, putting his reputation on the line, battling someone who's pretty notable in the world of battle rap. And even though people seemed a little more impressed by the time DAYLYT was done, I preferred what Ab did more. I just wish that more of that turned up on the tracks earlier in this record. You know, there's songs on this thing that I love, songs on this thing that I hate. There were tracks that were completely out of the blue, moves that were totally unexpected. Even though I feel at the end of the day that I'm very on the fence with this thing, it's at least interesting as an experience. I have to say that. I'm feeling a strong 5 to a light 6 on this thing. Transition, if you've given this thing a listen, what did you think of it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Why? What do you think I should review next? And that's it. Ab-Soul, these days, solo, forever.